Bring in show music, please.
This is Squawk Pod. I'm CNBC producer Katie Kramer. Today is Election Day 2024.
Just one more day. One more day.
This is my last rally. Can you believe it?
The final pitch is finished and voting has begun. It may be a tight race, but we've had that before. Remember Y2K? Al Gore's campaign chairman from 2000 knows all about it. Bill Daley, he was also President Obama's White House chief of staff, joins us.
I did believe it was President Trump's to lose, and I think he's done a pretty good job of attempting to accomplish that.
The politics, the economics, and the democracy at stake today.
This is not about who you're voting for. This is about the sanctity of the election process and hoping that we get things right.
Plus, the rest of the news. Is there any other news today? Boeing machinists end a landmark strike. Elon Musk's voter lottery continues to Election Day. And is there a side gig calling the Super Bowl?
You have to talk the entire time. It sounds crazy.
You should do it, Joe.
I'm CNBC producer Katie Kramer. It's the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November 2024.
They'll be squawking, but Squawk Box, we all squawk. So what?
Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Becky by in 3, 2, 1. Cue it, please.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Election Day and welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We're live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Becky Quick along with Joe Kernen and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Guys, it's almost anticlimactic because half the country's already voted. Something like 78 million votes. If you compare that to where we stood in 2020, 158 million voted. Mm-hmm. That was the largest turnout we've seen in ever.
We don't have to think.
It's not anticlimactic until we get the results.
Right.
And we don't have to. But we don't have to think. It's going to happen, and in due time. Maybe a couple days.
Yeah, you said whether you like it or not. Is there anybody who didn't want Election Day to get here at this point?
Well, I'm just saying that it is Election Day. There's no stopping it.
Yeah.
It is here. People will be
the good news is
out
the
at the polls.
campaign's over.
Campaign's over. The commercials that sometimes the same one was on like 3 times.
Yeah.
During breaks.
Right.
I don't even know who these people are. Half of them, because
it's the local races.
It's the local races, and if it's not in your district, they're not your people anyway. So.
Right.
But so nasty on both sides. Like it's like Jekyll and Hyde. Every candidate is Jekyll and Hyde, depending on you're looking at, their portrayal of themselves versus the.
It's a commentary on us.
It is.
It's a sad commentary on us.
On society, but
yeah.
No, I love society again, and I love America, and we're going to be fine. I want you to know that.
We are. And in fact, there is one election we do know the results on.
Which is what?
The union election.
Oh, the union. Oh, you're giving me the segue. We do have some news overnight. I want to get over to Phil LeBeau, talk about it, because the strike at Boeing is officially over. So, yes, one vote has already taken place, but a different kind of vote. Phil.
Andrew, this was a vote that was taking place. It took place yesterday. The results announced late last night.
This is a success. This is a win. It was hard bargaining on both sides, and there always is hard feelings. But we'll get through it, and we'll get back to building airplanes.
59% of the machinists who voted, and this strike impacts about 32,000, but 59% of those who voted, and it was a little bit fewer than that, those members will get a 38% raise over 4 years. So the machinists are locked in to a 38% raise over 4 years. The work will resume tomorrow. I've had a few people already say to me, well, why isn't everybody back at work tomorrow? Well, it doesn't happen because everybody goes back in tomorrow. It'll be a gradual increase in the number of people reporting all the way through early next week. And then they will gradually increase production. They just can't flip a switch and start cranking out the planes immediately. This will happen on a gradual basis, and that's by design. Kelly Wartburg, when we talked with him, the CEO of Boeing, said, look, we want to make sure that we do this right. He also released a statement last night saying, while the past few months have been difficult for all of us, we are all part of the same team. We will only move forward by listening and working together. There is much work ahead to return to the excellence that made Boeing an iconic company. The cost of this contract, by the way, is estimated to be about $1.1 billion. That's the headwind that will come with the 38% raise, the $12,000 signing bonus, everything that goes into this contract. But the important thing here, guys, this now allows the company to move forward with some certainty in terms of gradually increasing production through the end of this year, and then obviously in 2025.
Phil, it's it's good that this is finally over, but the real question that I have when you look at what Boeing's got to do now, how hard it's going to be to dig out of this hole, and what the relationship is between management and the employees at this point.
Well, I thought Kelly Ortberg's message made it very clear. They need to work together. And when we've talked with him, and when we talked to him after the Q3 financials, he made it clear that one of his top priorities is to get them to a point where they are working together.
I've said there's no silver bullet. This isn't going to be fixed in one fell swoop. We've got a lot of issues here that we're dealing with. The first thing we've got to do is stabilize the business, and obviously getting through the IAM strike is the first big step in doing that. But then we've also got to shore up our balance sheet so that we have a solid balance sheet to manage the realities of our business going forward.
You're going to really struggle to improve the quality if you cannot get on the same page. This has been a problem at Boeing for decades, and Kelly Ortberg knows it's not going to change overnight, but he knows that fixing the culture is as important as being able to say to Wall Street, look, we're moving our production on a monthly basis up to X number of planes. You can sit there and say, we're going to move up to X number of planes, but if the quality doesn't improve, you're spinning your wheels.
I was wondering the same thing. If you have 41% of the union that did not vote to ratify this, voted against this deal, are you going to have a disgruntled workforce that's sitting there, and how do you manage that?
Well, look, with all contracts, you are going to have a percentage of workers who are not happy with the deal, and they vote against the deal. We saw that with the UAW. We've seen this, with the dock workers. You see this with all of these, and that doesn't mean that the performance can't improve. And that's the challenge for Kelly Ortberg, building the culture again so that they can say, look, everything that comes out of this particular plant, whether it's the 737 MAX, 777, 787, regardless of the aircraft, he wants to make sure that they can say to their customers, when we deliver it, it is the highest quality, that you don't have to do a shakedown and say, oh, look at this, more problems with the planes that we're getting from Boeing. He has made it very clear. That is his top priority.
Phil, we are going to leave it there. Thank you.
A judge has rejected a request by the Philadelphia district attorney to block Elon Musk's $1 million daily giveaway to registered voters in Pennsylvania and other swing states. Musk's America PAC has awarded at least $17 million to people in those swing states who sign a petition supporting the Constitution. The PAC plans to give out the final $1 million investment today. The PAC's treasurer testified that the winners weren't chosen randomly, as Musk had claimed, but were questioned before the prizes were announced to feel out their personality, make sure they were someone whose values aligned with the PAC, in their words. The PAC's former treasurer testified that the PAC's giveaway does not constitute an illegal lottery because, quote, there's no prize to be won. Instead, we're setting up contractual obligations to serve as spokespeople for the PAC.
I thought that was fascinating. Technically, I get the idea of it.
It's not a lottery.
Well, because it's effectively like putting out a jobs wanted ad and saying that we may give you a job to do this if we like you.
Right.
Yeah.
But we can't. Now, interestingly, for a job, it's unclear to me, historically, if you can require people to sign petitions as part of your job. Right? So it's a whole...
Right.
It's very complicated.
Western security officials told the Wall Street Journal that they believe Russia is behind a covert plot that aimed to start fires aboard cargo or passenger aircraft flying to the U.S. and Canada. 2 devices that were ignited at DHL logistics hubs in July. One was in Germany, the other was in England. Investigators say that those devices were electric massagers that were implanted with magnesium-based flammable substances. They believe the devices were sent as a test run by a suspect who was used as a proxy by Russian spy services. So the idea of Russian covert operations targeting either delivery flights or passenger flights is a pretty harrowing one.
I mean, that's not fair.
It's terrorism. It's what you do when you are no longer a world power.
For a state to be involved, you love The Wire. I mean, there's certain things in the game which all these guys are involved with. There's things you don't do. You You don't put a hit out on someone on a Sunday morning when he's going to church with his mother.
But you follow the rules until you are losing.
So this is not what you're supposed to do.
No, but you follow the rules
This is
until
not
you're
part
losing.
of the game. This is cargo or passenger airliners.
It's a reflection of where Putin is. He's backed into a corner at this point, if this is the case.
You know what? I guess we shouldn't be surprised because all those civilians in Ukraine and all those apartment buildings and hospitals were not part of it either.
Fox CEO Lachlan Murdoch confirming yesterday that the network has now completed its sales effort for ads in Super Bowl 59. He said the inventory sold out at a record pricing, commanding rates, you ready for this? Higher than $7 million for just a 30-second spot. That are good economics if you can get them.
Certainly is.
But by the way, they've also paid.
That's why the sports leagues are so valuable.
They've also paid a small, a hefty price
to get it.
To get it,
Right.
and they've paid Mr. Brady a lot to, voice it, if you will.
Who, by the way, has gotten pretty good.
He's gotten a lot. He's gotten, and by the way, I would say steadily even improved.
And who was I watching the other day? You have to talk the entire time. Like it sounds crazy.
You should do it, Joe.
Yeah, I should do it. No, but you have to talk the entire time. I saw someone other, and it was like, God, this guy really never. And that's what they do. That's what Craig Olsen does.
That's realize that you're
right.
doing
That's what
that.
Craig Olsen does. That's what Tony Romo does. That's what all of them do.
That's the business.
They never
like talking to yourself.
Never an unspoken thought. It's
kind of like
it looks like his little finger was a millimeter to the left on that catch. Little fingers are. Whatever crosses their mind, they're.
Like I said, it's kind of like here.
I feel like you've got a second career, my friend.
Oh, was I constipated this morning? It was.
Never mind.
Okay, let's go.
I'm just kidding. That's not true. I feel great.
Tease will be next.
Coming up on Squawk Pod, we're here. U.S. election results are less than 24 hours away, or are they? Our Washington correspondent Eamon Javers says no one knows anything, at least not yet.
You got to get off the roller coaster, man.
It's a tight race. So what happens if the results are close? Well, we asked Bill Daley, Al Gore's campaign chairman in the infamous 2000 election.
They'll be squawking. Will there be violence? No, I don't think so.
This is Squawk Pod from CNBC with Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin.
Stand by, Joe. In 3, 2, 1, his mic, cue.
Vice President Kamala Harris, former President Donald Trump making their final pitches to voters in key swing states. Eamon Javers is tracking the race to the finish line. This is not a jibber jabbers segment.
This is the real. This is election day special. This is special coverage.
If you haven't trademarked that name yet,
I need to get on that.
Jibber jabbers.
Yeah, no, it's great.
It's phenomenal.
It's gold. Let's do the news. Former President Donald Trump spent the final day of his third presidential campaign in 3 key battleground states on Monday, starting off in Raleigh, North Carolina, before crisscrossing the state of Pennsylvania with stops in Reading and Pittsburgh, and stopping off for a nighttime rally in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
It's amazing. I love you all. You're very special. This is my last rally. Can you believe it? The rallies, these big, beautiful rallies, there's never been anything like it.
Now, in Pennsylvania, Trump was surrounded by family on stage after a campaign speech hitting his recurring themes on immigration and also suggesting that if he loses, gas prices will go to $15 per gallon. But it was that North Carolina stop that really raised eyebrows among political experts. That's the one battleground state that Trump won back in 2020. So it may be an indication of some worry on the part of the campaign that he was on the ground there, shoring it up on the final day. Now, for her part, Vice President Kamala Harris, by contrast, spent her final day campaigning entirely in Pennsylvania, underscoring the importance of the 19 electoral college votes in that state and making remarks in Allentown, Pittsburgh, and Philadelphia. In Allentown, Harris said she had momentum on her side and pledged that instead of seeking to jail people who disagreed with her, she would give them a seat at the table. And in Philadelphia, she was flanked by celebrities including Oprah Winfrey and Lady Gaga as she wrapped up her campaign.
Just one more day. One more day. One more day left in one of the most consequential elections of our lifetime, and momentum is on our side.
And guys, we expect Donald Trump to end the day today at his home in Florida and Kamala Harris to overnight tonight at the vice president's residence in Washington. Each candidate will then hunker down and, like the rest of us, wait for results. Back over to you guys.
As looking, the running total used to be, I've watched it for the last, I don't know how long, it's 0.0000 now. Days left.
Yeah.
Hours left.
Countdown is
minutes
over.
left.
The voting
it's all
begins.
zeros.
This is it.
It's
It
all
ended
zero.
at 6 a.m. this morning, or what was the countdown?
I think it was until 6 a.m.
Midnight last night, Dixville Notch. We got the official
Made it
first
3-8.
vote count, and it is tied 3-3.
That's the
Even
indication
that
of
tells
what
us
to
nothing.
expect.
Although it's a bit of a swing toward Trump from where it was in
Hasn't been there
2020.
before,
So
that's right.
we have the first actual votes to count, and this election is a tie,
Well, that
and
set- that
nobody
settles
knows
it.
anything this morning.
That settles it.
Based on
then.
those
It's
6
definitely
votes.
going back.
Right, based on those 6 people. Maybe we should just let them do it.
Yeah.
Look, nobody knows anything. And think about the momentous swing we've had in these two political parties over the past 20 years or so. I mean, these are two very different parties from where they were during the Bush-Gore tie back in 2000. And yet here we are as a country on Election Day in 2024, still tied. It is striking to me that the Republican Party has gone through so many changes, going from the party of sort of big business and evangelical Christian conservatives to a populist working class party that is very different than it was even 6 years ago. And yet the tie remains in place.
Donald Trump is pulling more paycheck-to-paycheck workers, workers who are living paycheck to paycheck than any Republican has to this point. The Democratic Party has changed too. They're pulling more high-income earners, both men and women.
And they're pulling
Democrats
the Cheney
have ever
family,
pulled in the
right?
past.
I mean, think about how different the Democratic Party is than it was
They
just 4
believe in
years
free
ago.
speech and peace, brother.
Right, exactly. So these are two very different parties, and yet the country is still as divided as it is today. We have no idea where this thing is going tonight. And I think that makes it exciting, although they say, I'm told markets hate uncertainty, and here we are.
The markets have
Uncertainty.
not been moving around too much based on the uncertainty.
Because of the House-Senate split. I
Yeah.
think.
Well, look, either
House is
way,
pretty close, though.
you might have
House is
divided
a
government
little close.
in Congress, and that means whoever gets elected today in the presidency might not be able to do all the things that they're promising on the campaign trail. A lot of campaign promises
Markets
out
want
there.
here.
Right.
Donald Trump's been out there talking about ending the income tax and going back to an 1890s world where you just had tariffs only. You know, that's probably not going to happen.
I
right?
blame polls, too. I blame the pollsters because in 2022, they're so wrong, but now they tell us that they've adjusted for the mistakes from 2022, but we don't know.
We don't know what today is.
You got to get off the polar
We don't know what
coaster,
the
man.
differences are today.
The polls but the betting sites are just as bad.
And so many shy voters, right? A lot of voters who won't say they're going to vote for Harris.
Well, and
They're
even
probably
if you
going to
do,
vote for Harris.
the
A lot
voters
of
you do track down, not even my dad, he won't
Right.
even answer the phone to talk to a pollster anymore.
Yeah,
I like
people
that.
don't answer questions.
I like
gotta
that
say thank you.
shy voters.
We'll see you a lot. It's
gonna be a long day.
Hours, and
Can I
we'll
go
see
fascinating
you
day.
again tomorrow morning.
Voters are out at the polls this morning as the presidential election is down to its final hours. Joining us right now is Bill Daley. He served as Commerce Secretary in the Clinton administration. He was also former President Obama's chief of staff. And Bill, thank you for being with us this morning. It's really good to see you.
Nice to see you. Thanks.
All right, let's talk a little bit about what you think's happening, because just about 3 weeks ago, you had some commentary, and I think it was Politico, where you said you thought that Kamala Harris was the underdog, that this was former President Trump's to lose in this situation unless things changed in the last 3 weeks of the campaign. What do you think now?
Well, I think I did believe it was President Trump's to lose, and I think he's done a pretty good job of attempting to accomplish that. The last 3 weeks have not been good for him, in my opinion. I think that you've seen the momentum, which is much stronger. And I listened to Frank Luntz earlier, and some of the indicators, whether it's the senior women, white women who generally vote Republican, maybe going a different way. There's a number of signs at the end. Obviously, it is a divided country. The election will be close, and I do believe we will know, not that the votes will all be counted, but we'll have a pretty good sense of where it's going much earlier than by Saturday. I think by late tomorrow, or maybe midday tomorrow, there'll be a sense of where it's going either way for President Trump or for Vice President Harris. But I think she's got momentum, which is quite important.
But you'd agree that we may not know this, not just tonight, but not tomorrow morning at this time?
Look at that. I think we won't know for certainty. I chaired Al Gore's campaign in 2000. We went 5 weeks not knowing exactly who was going to be the president of the United States. And the country dealt with it. And we all went through, it was kind of crazy with the court system in Florida and then the federal courts. But America was resolved in having it completed. And it was completed, and we moved on. So all of this talk about violence and all of this stuff, we ought to just all calm down. The system does work.
Part of the reason the system worked in 2000 was because Al Gore conceded. He has since said that he kind of wishes he hadn't done that maybe he handed it away by doing that. Do you think either of these candidates will concede if it's close, if it looks where we're down to, I don't know if you still count hanging chads at this point or how we figure this out, but if we're still in that sort of a scenario like that, do you think it will be a gracious concession by either of these candidates?
Well, I sure hope so. But if there's a recount in a certain state, as there were last time, the process will work. We went, as I said, 5 weeks with the Chad craziness in Florida. And in the end, President Bush won the state of Florida by 500 votes when the count was stopped. Okay? So we dealt with it. And there's a process for a recount. Just because it's very close by Saturday, let's say, where most of the votes are counted, and there's a recount, that doesn't mean there's some nefarious action going on. There's only one reason that there's any doubt about these things, and that's because President Trump 4 years ago put the doubt in the American people that it was not a fair and free election. And it was, as Franklin said. But you still have people, starting with former President Trump, who will not admit that he lost or the election was a fair and free election 4 years ago. That's the only reason there's any of this doubt.
There's still a narrative that Al Gore won, because if you were running things down there, you had two very Democratic counties. You had Dade, Miami-Dade, and Broward, and you were harvesting votes. You were going to count them until you won, and that's what you put the country through. But thank God the Supreme Court and courts finally stepped in for that, and he had to.
Wait, Joe.
I remember the people. I was there. I was actually in Florida. I remember the people looking like this, looking up at the Chads.
Yes, absolutely.
Here's another Democratic vote. The country didn't need to go through that, and maybe Trump put us through something 4 years ago, but you and David Boies and everybody else put us through something back in 2000 too.
Joe, that's the process. If election's that close,
well, that was the process in 2020 too.
Yes,
they were harvesting votes. They were harvesting votes in two Democratic counties.
Joe, every process last time that moved forward with a recount, whether it was in Arizona or Pennsylvania or wherever, all ended up where they started. That was Joe Biden won by whatever number it was. It may not have been the exact number when they started the recount. And the process in Florida, in those 5 counties, and there were 5 that were challenged, and George Bush won by 500 votes. Would he? The truth of the matter is, there were very few votes left to be counted, hanging chads or whatever you call them, and by the end of that, the odds are George Bush would have still won by probably a few hundred more than 500. That was the process.
The courts weighed in, and Al Gore conceded based on what the courts had done.
He had no choice, obviously.
It's just different.
The court could have said it could continue.
If the court said stop counting and stop harvesting, and
the courts weighed in on the courts.
I think if you had kept going, you would have won. If you had kept going,
that's a lie. That is absolutely untrue. Absolutely untrue. Absolutely untrue. That's not true. No one was harvesting votes. That word implies people were finding votes. Nobody was calling a count.
If you decide a hanging chad, if you change it and decide a hanging chad is a Democratic vote instead of a vote for George Bush, you can do that. You can do that till you find enough.
There were people that were doing
5 weeks
in public. In public, Joe.
How old were you?
In public. How old was I? 20 years?
No, not you. He's asking.
I'm frustrated for a different reason.
Not you, Bill.
I'm frustrated for a different reason, which is I think that the public needs to just genuinely know about this particular election, and there is a major distinction, which is that you have somebody who has been out of office, who has not been the president for the past 4 years, who's continued to tell the public repeatedly and wrongly, even up until this weekend, that he was supposed to be in office and that this past election was not real. That is a completely different situation. You can fight with him about all you want.
And
challenging elections are as old as time, and it was challenged.
Courts did not
we
side
still
with it.
hear that.
But
we still hear from Hillary. We heard from Joe Biden that the 2016
I'm worried that the way you're positing it is
don't
conflating.
Worry about it. People don't care that I'm positing it that way.
That you're conflating this with that, and it's not the same thing.
Bill, hopefully.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, if this was an election, you guys would win 3-1. So congratulations.
Well, this is not about who you're voting for.
Okay.
This is about the sanctity of the election process and hoping that we get things right.
Which has been questioned. You want to see my going all the way back? I can show you 2020, 2016, 2012, all the way back. Challenged when you're actually certification challenged by Democrats. I'm not going to do it.
Bill, I will say there's some pretty weird. There's some
Democrats
pretty weird ways
invented it.
There's some pretty weird ways of
Democrats
election
invented
policies in every state that are determined by the legislatures. There's some pretty arcane election rules. When you hear about those things, as an outsider, it certainly sounds like, what? This is how they do it? It is a bizarre way that some of these election things go through, and maybe that leads to some of the confusion.
And we do it at the county or precinct level in each state. And each state, when we dealt in Florida, not to go back to that 24 years ago, each county had its own election board. It has its own rules of that election board, and they may be arcane. But it's a local election, basically. These aren't run by the federal government. They're run by our neighbors and our friends at the local level, not both Republican and Democratic.
Bill, let me just ask you, do you think that this will be something that a week from now we'll be able to say, whoever wins, okay, we're moving forward as a country and this is how it works?
Look, there are many people who will not accept the results, period, no matter what side. They'll just say whatever they want to say. We have to move on. The government will move on. Whoever wins will be inaugurated in January, and they'll put their government together and their policies, and whatever happens with Congress and the division of Congress, who controls will have an enormous impact. So yes, the country will move on. Whether some people may accept the results or want to join in making America move forward remains to be seen, to be frank with you.
What do you think is going to happen if Trump wins, Bill? Think it's going to be a nice, orderly transition with no squawking or challenging?
There'll be squawking, but Squawk Box, we all squawk. So what? There'll be squawking. Will there be violence? No, I don't think so. Will there be disappointed people? Yeah,
it'll be mostly peaceful, like that summer. Okay. All right.
Like what summer?
Like the summer before the other things that happened. The summer where
but that had
28
people
died. I'm not saying it had anything to do with that, but the other side is perfectly capable of. No. We keep hearing every time we ask a question, will the results be accepted this time? It's about whether Trump's going to accept the results. If it goes the other way,
there's no doubt.
We'll see.
Now, Vice President Harris gets up the day after, or whenever, if President Trump was to win, it stands up and says, "I don't accept this. This is terrible. My people
I don't know what's
going
to happen. Look,
how can you conflate?
If a Nazi fascist guy that resembles Hitler, which he's been pigeonholed as by the left, if he becomes the president, there are a lot of people that aren't going to be able to accept that. So we'll see what happens.
But what I don't understand, which I just want to posit to you, is this idea that somehow...
Can we bring in someone...
hold on.
Can we get McCarthy here?
No, but that the protests... Sure? Okay. You're suggesting that the protests after
they're going to be on both sides.
After the murder of George Floyd is somehow similar to the insurrection that happened.
The violence was much worse.
I'm not disagreeing, by the way, that the violence was worse. Let's stipulate that the violence was worse.
Almost 30 people died versus no policemen were killed that day.
Correct, but let's understand why that happened. And I'm not suggesting that it happened for the right reasons at all. At all. But let's just put it, because I think that viewers who may not know all the facts, when you say these things, they think they're the same thing.
Okay, so they'll get them from you now. And give us the facts.
The facts are they or not.
Okay, great. That's your opinion. These are all opinions.
I don't think these are opinions. I think that's the problem. And I worry deeply that there's just misinformation that then gets posited.
Hey, Bill, I want to thank you for being with us this morning.
The left is perfectly capable of some serious. We'll see what happens.
Thanks,
Bill
Becky.
Daley.
Appreciate it. Have a nice day.
And that's Squawk Pod for today. Thanks for listening. Make CNBC part of your election night plans. We'll be on all night with primetime and overnight coverage. And Squawk Box, hosted by Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin, starts at 5 a.m. Wednesday morning, November 6th. No matter what we know by then, we'll be on TV as the world wakes up. And keep an eye on your podcast feed for the earliest and quickest turns we can get you. If you miss the show, if you can't catch it all, Squawk Pod gets you the very best analysis and the interviews you can't miss in an easy-to-digest, on-the-go audio format. Make sure you follow, like, or subscribe wherever you listen, and don't miss a thing. Okay, deep breath. The day is here. Go vote. If you already have, help someone else get to the polls or get the time to do so. That's it. We'll meet you right back here tomorrow.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.